Marcus Chen stood in the glass cage looking out at the biggest courtroom he had ever seen. The wall stretched up so high that the ceiling disappeared into darkness. Thousands of alien beings filled the seats, all watching him with eyes that glowed different colors. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others looked like walking crystals. A few seemed to be made of pure light. He wore the standard prisoner uniform, gray cloth that felt rough against his skin. Metal chains connected his hands and feet, making it hard to walk. The chains were not really needed. Where could he run in the middle of space? But they were part of the show. Everyone needed to see that humans could be controlled. The judge was a creature called a Villani. It looked like a tall, thin person made of silver metal, but Marcus knew it was alive. Its voice came from speakers built into the courtroom walls because Villani could not make sounds the way humans did. "Marcus Chen of Earth," the judge said, "you are charged with the murder of 5,731 innocent beings. How do you answer?" Marcus had heard this number so many times that it felt like a weight on his chest. 5,731. Each number was a life. Each life had a name, a family, dreams for the future. The prosecution had shown pictures of every single victim. Children who would never grow up. Parents who would never see their families again. Artists who would never create another beautiful thing. "I was protecting my fleet," Marcus said. His voice sounded small in the huge room. The prosecutor stood up. It was another Villani, taller than the judge. Its silver skin reflected the courtroom lights as it moved. "Protection?" the prosecutor said. "The convoy you attacked was carrying civilians, families, scientists, teachers. They had no weapons. Their ships sent peaceful signals. Yet you ordered your fleet to fire on them without warning." "That's not what happened," Marcus said. "The evidence speaks for itself," the prosecutor continued. It pressed something on its desk, and the air above the courtroom filled with holographic images. Marcus saw his own ship, the Earth Navy vessel Defiance. Around it were 49 other human ships. They looked small and ugly compared to the beautiful Villani vessels that approached them. The Villani ships looked like works of art. They were white and curved, with surfaces that seemed to glow from within. They moved through space like dancers, turning and spinning in perfect formation. They were so beautiful that it hurt to look at them. "Watch carefully," the prosecutor said. "The human fleet opens fire without any warning. The Villani ships do not even raise their shields. They try to flee, but the humans chase them down and destroy every ship." Marcus watched the replay of the battle. From this angle, it did look like murder. The human ships fired missiles and lasers at vessels that seemed helpless. The Villani ships broke apart in bright flashes of light. Some tried to escape, but the human ships followed them and finished them off. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of Marcus breathing. He knew that every alien in the room was thinking the same thing. Humans were monsters. "I had 3 seconds to make a decision," Marcus said. 3 seconds to choose between my people and theirs. "There was no threat," the prosecutor said. "The investigation found no weapons on any Villani ship. No battle plans, no hostile intentions. You murdered innocents because you were afraid." Marcus closed his eyes. He could still remember that moment. He was on the bridge of his ship, looking at the tactical display. The Villani convoy was approaching fast, too fast, and they were not flying like peaceful merchants or scientists. They were flying in an attack formation that Marcus recognized from his military training. "They were moving in formation Delta 7, Marcus said. "It's a battle pattern designed to surround and destroy a smaller force." "Formation Delta 7 is also used for escort duty," the prosecutor replied. "The Villani were protecting their civilian ships from pirates. It is a common practice in this region of space." Marcus wanted to scream. Yes, Formation Delta 7 could be used for escort duty, but not the way these ships were using it. They were positioning themselves to cut off every escape route. They were charging their weapons while broadcasting peaceful messages. Their civilian ships were staying back while their military vessels moved forward. But how could he explain this to creatures who had never been in a space battle? How could he make them understand that sometimes you have to choose between being a killer and being dead? "The defendant will notice," said a new voice, "that his own testimony confirms his guilt." Marcus looked up to see the most frightening creature in the courtroom. It called itself the first speaker, and it was older than human civilization. It looked like a mountain of black crystal with lights deep inside. When it spoke, Marcus could feel the words in his bones. "The defendant admits he had a choice," the first speaker continued. "He chose to kill rather than risk his own life and the lives of his soldiers. This is exactly the kind of primitive thinking that makes humans unfit for galactic society. My fleet had 50,000 people, Marcus said. If I was wrong about the Villani intentions, they would all die. If you were right about Villani intentions, 5,731 innocents would die, the first speaker replied. You chose to save people you knew over people you did not know. This is tribal thinking. This is why humans are still considered a dangerous species. Marcus felt his anger growing. What was I supposed to do? Let them destroy us? You were supposed to try communication first. You were supposed to trust in the goodness of other beings. You were supposed to choose peace over violence. I tried communication. They wouldn't answer our calls. Because they were busy coordinating the protection of their civilian ships, the prosecutor said. They could not spare crew members to chat with strange aliens. It was useless. Marcus could see it in the faces around him. The trial was just for show. The decision had been made before he ever entered this courtroom. Humanity wanted to join the galactic community, and the galaxy wanted proof that humans could be controlled. Marcus Chen would be that proof. The judge raised one silver hand. This court will take a recess to consider the evidence. When we return, we will announce the sentence. As the aliens began to file out of the courtroom, Marcus stayed in his cage. He thought about his wife Sarah back on Earth. He thought about his daughter Katie, who was only 6 years old. He thought about the 50,000 people on his fleet who went home to their families because he made a choice in 3 seconds. He also thought about the 5,731 Villani who died because of that same choice. Their names were burned into his memory. The prosecution had made sure of that. Every day of the trial, they read more names. Every day Marcus learned about more lives that ended because he pulled a trigger. The courtroom was almost empty now. Just Marcus in his cage and a few guards who looked like giant insects. The silence was so complete that Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. That was when it happened. Every screen in the courtroom suddenly turned bright white. The lights in the ceiling began to flash. Warning sirens started to scream from every speaker. The guards started moving quickly, talking to each other in clicking sounds that Marcus could not understand. Then, on every screen in letters that burned like fire, a single word appeared. Destruction. The word stayed there for exactly 1 minute. Then all the screens went black. The sirens stopped. The lights returned to normal. The guards stopped moving and stared at each other with what looked like confusion. Marcus stared at the blank screens. In 30 years of space travel, he had never seen anything like this. What could possibly take control of every computer system in a space station at the same time? And why that word? Why destruction? One of the guards approached his cage. It made clicking sounds that Marcus somehow understood meant, "You see this before?" Marcus shook his head. "Never." The guard clicked some more, then walked away. But Marcus could see that it was scared. All the guards were scared. And if creatures who worked for the galactic government were scared, then something very big was happening. Something that might change everything. The message appeared everywhere at the same time. On Earth, people watched their television screens go white before showing the burning word, destruction. On Mars colonies, workers stopped their mining equipment as every computer displayed the same message. On the moon bases, scientists stared in wonder as instruments that had been silent for centuries suddenly came to life. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo was in her laboratory on Europa Station when it happened. She was studying ancient alien artifacts when every device in her lab began to glow. Machines that had not worked for thousands of years suddenly turned on. Stone tablets covered in strange writing started to shine with inner light. Even the coffee maker displayed the word in letters that seemed to move and dance. Sarah was a xenoarchaeologist. That meant she studied the remains of alien civilizations that had died long ago. She had spent her whole career trying to understand races that had lived and died before humans ever left Earth. Now, for the first time in 20 years of research, the ancient technology was responding to something. Her phone buzzed with messages from colleagues all over the galaxy. The same thing was happening everywhere. On dead worlds where no life had existed for millions of years, ancient buildings were lighting up. Ruins that had been dark since before Earth had an atmosphere were suddenly broadcasting signals into space. But the strangest reports came from the deepest parts of space. Scientists using the most powerful instruments claimed they could see the message written in the cosmic background radiation itself. The universe was trying to tell them something. and it was using every possible method to make sure they heard it. Sarah had seen this word before. She ran to her research files and pulled out photographs from excavations on 12 different worlds. In each photo, the word destruction appeared in the ancient writing systems. She had always thought it was a warning about some long-ago war. Now she wondered if it meant something completely different. Her computer chimed with an urgent message from the Galactic Tribunal. They wanted every xenoarchaeologist to report immediately to Kepler Station. Whatever was happening, the government needed answers fast. Meanwhile, Marcus Chen sat in his cell, watching the guards panic. The insect-like creatures were running back and forth, clicking at each other in what sounded like fear. Every few minutes, one of them would look at Marcus through the energy bars that kept him locked up. They seemed to think that somehow this was his fault. I don't know what's happening either, Marcus told them, but they could not understand his words. A new guard arrived. This one was different. It looked more like a human, but with blue skin and 4 arms. It spoke in perfect English. Marcus Chen, it said. You must come with me. Where are we going? The first speaker wants to see you now. Marcus was surprised. The first speaker was the most important being in the galaxy. It did not waste time talking to prisoners, especially human prisoners who were about to be executed. But the guard unlocked his cell and led him through corridors he had never seen before. They walked for what felt like hours. The station was much bigger than Marcus had realized. They passed through sections where different alien species lived and worked. He saw gardens where trees grew in impossible colors. He saw laboratories where scientists worked with equipment that looked like magic. He saw children of a dozen different species playing games that made no sense to human eyes. Finally, they reached a door that was 30 feet tall and made of some kind of black metal. The guard pressed its hand against the door, and it slowly opened to reveal a room that took Marcus's breath away. The room was like standing inside a star. The walls curved up and away until they became the ceiling, and every surface was covered with patterns of light that moved like living things. In the center of the room sat the first speaker, looking even more frightening than it had in the courtroom. Approach, the first speaker said, and its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. Marcus walked forward until he was standing directly in front of the massive crystal being. Up close, he could see that the lights inside its body were not random. They formed patterns that reminded him of neural networks in a human brain. Do you know why I summoned you? The first speaker asked. Because of the message? Because of what the message means. The first speaker's lights pulsed in a rhythm that felt almost like breathing. The word that appeared across the galaxy is not a threat, Marcus Chen. It is a classification. I don't understand. Tell me, human. What do you know about the history of the Galactic Council? Marcus shrugged. Not much. It was formed to bring peace to the galaxy, to help different species work together instead of fighting wars. That is the story we tell children. The truth is more complex. The first speaker gestured with one crystalline arm, and the lights on the walls changed to show images of different alien worlds. Every species that joins the council must pass a test. They must prove that they understand the burden of necessary destruction. The images showed wars, explosions, planets burning. Marcus saw the beautiful Zephyrians, a race known throughout the galaxy for their art and poetry, dropping poison bombs on their own world. He saw the peaceful Kelmorians using massive weapons to destroy their own moon. I don't understand, Marcus said again. Each species faces a moment when they must choose between their own moral comfort and the survival of others. The Zephyrians had to poison their atmosphere to stop a plague that would have spread to other worlds. The Kelmorians had to destroy their moon to prevent it from crashing into their planet and killing billions. Marcus began to understand. And humans? Humans faced their test when your convoy encountered what appeared to be Villani civilians. But those civilians were carrying something far more dangerous than weapons. The lights on the walls changed again. This time, Marcus saw the inside of one of the Villani ships he had destroyed. In the cargo bay was a device he did not recognize, a sphere of metal and crystal that seemed to bend light around itself. What is it? Marcus asked. A consciousness disruptor. If the Villani had been allowed to reach their destination, this device would have been activated. Every thinking mind within 100 light-years would have been reduced to the intelligence of an animal. Billions of beings would have lived, but they would no longer have been truly alive. Marcus felt cold. The Villani were going to use that? The Villani did not know what they carried. They believed they were transporting art objects to a museum. The real controllers were hidden among the civilian population. They belonged to a cult that believes consciousness is a disease that must be cured. But how did you know this? Why didn't you tell me during the trial? The first speaker's lights dimmed. We did not know until after your trial began. Our investigation of the wreckage revealed the truth. You made the correct choice, Marcus Chen, but you made it for the wrong reasons. Marcus sat down hard on the floor. So the trial was fake? The trial was real, but it was not about the crimes you thought you had committed. It was about whether humanity could bear the weight of necessary evil. Every species must prove they can make the hard choices before they are allowed to join the true Galactic Council. The True Council? The organization you were tried by is the public face of galactic government. It promotes peace and cooperation and makes everyone feel safe. But behind it is another organization, one that coordinates the necessary evils that keep the galaxy functioning. Marcus thought about this. And now humans are part of this secret council? That depends on you. The universe itself has acknowledged your choice. The message that appeared everywhere was confirmation that you passed the test. But passing the test is only the beginning. The first speaker stood up. It was even bigger than Marcus had thought, at least 20 feet tall and glowing with an inner fire that made it hard to look at directly. You have a choice to make. Marcus Chen, you can return to Earth and live quietly knowing that you saved billions of lives. Or you can accept the burden of representing humanity in the Council of Necessary Evils. What would that mean? It would mean making choices like the one you made with the Villani convoy. Again and again. For the rest of your life. It would mean carrying the weight of necessary evil so that others can sleep peacefully. Marcus looked at the images on the walls. He saw worlds at peace because someone, somewhere, had made a terrible choice to keep them safe. He thought about his wife and daughter on Earth, living happy lives because people like him were willing to bear the burden of protecting them. What's my first assignment? He asked. The first speaker's lights pulsed in what might have been approval. There is a planet of 12 billion innocent beings. Their industrial activities are accelerating the heat death of their local galaxy cluster. The traditional solution would be to eliminate them quickly and quietly. And the alternative? There might not be one. But if there is, it will require resources and effort that the Council considers wasteful. Marcus stood up and looked the ancient being in its crystal eyes. Then I guess we better find an alternative. The Council of Necessary Evils met in a place that did not officially exist. The station was hidden in the space between galaxies, where no light from any star could reach it. It was built from materials that could not be detected by any known scanner. Even its existence was classified at levels so high that most galactic governments had never heard of it. Marcus Chen walked through halls lined with memorials. Each wall held the names of beings who had died for the greater good. Some had sacrificed themselves willingly, others had been sacrificed by the choices of this council. The walls went on for miles, covered with billions of names in hundreds of languages. He was no longer wearing the gray prisoner uniform. Instead, he wore the black robes of a council member. The fabric was woven with threads that showed the stars themselves, changing as he moved to display different constellations. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. In the main council chamber, representatives from 47 different species sat around a table made from a single piece of crystallized time. The table showed images of the past, present, and possible futures all at once. Looking at it for too long could drive a person insane. The Nexus Prime situation requires immediate action, said Counselor Vex, a being that looked like a spider made of liquid mercury. 12 billion inhabitants. Their industrial processes are releasing exotic particles that accelerate entropy decay in their local cluster. If we do nothing, 7 star systems will age to death within 50 standard years. The images on the table shifted to show the doomed planet. It was beautiful. Blue oceans, green continents, cities that sparkled like jewels. The people looked almost human, except for the extra set of arms and the flowers that grew from their foreheads. They seemed happy. Children played in parks. Artists created sculptures from living light. Scientists worked to cure diseases and explore their universe. Recommended solution? Asked the first speaker. Staged pandemic, replied Counselor Vex. We introduce a modified virus that causes painless death within 6 months. The population believes they are dying from natural causes. No panic, no wars, no suffering beyond the inevitable. Marcus felt sick. These beings were talking about murder on a scale that made his destruction of the Villani convoy seem like a small accident. 12 billion lives ended with the same casual efficiency that humans might use to schedule a meeting. The virus is already prepared, continued Counselor Vex. We have used similar methods 47 times in the past 3,000 years. The process is clean, efficient, and causes minimal disruption to galactic stability. Other council members nodded their approval. Marcus could see the logic. 12 billion deaths now would prevent the destruction of 7 star systems later. The math was simple, but the math did not account for the dreams of those 12 billion people. It did not count their love for their families or their hopes for the future. I object, Marcus said. The council chamber fell silent. Several alien beings turned to stare at him with expressions that ranged from surprise to amusement. A few looked angry. You object? Said Counselor Thane, a being of living energy that spoke through controlled lightning. On what grounds? On the grounds that we haven't tried anything else. Alternative solutions were considered and rejected, said Counselor Vex. Relocation would require resources equivalent to building 50 new worlds. Technological intervention would require sharing advanced knowledge with a species that is not ready for it. Political solutions would require revealing the existence of this council, which would destabilize galactic society. What about evacuation? I just explained why that is impossible. You explained why it's expensive and difficult. That's not the same as impossible. The first speaker leaned forward. Marcus Chen, you have been a member of this council for exactly 14 days. Members with centuries of experience have already considered every alternative. Your emotional attachment to these beings does not change the mathematical reality of the situation. Marcus stood up. Around the table, representatives of the galaxy's most advanced species watched him with expressions that ranged from curiosity to contempt. He thought about his daughter Katie, playing in their backyard on Earth. He thought about the flowers growing from the foreheads of the doomed alien children. What if we're wrong? Marcus asked. Explain. What if the real problem isn't that we need to kill these people? What if the real problem is that we've gotten so used to killing people that we've stopped looking for other solutions? Counselor Vex's liquid mercury body rippled with what might have been laughter. You suggest that 47 species, each with thousands of years of experience, have all been thinking incorrectly? I suggest that 47 species have been thinking the same way for so long that they've forgotten there might be other ways to think. Marcus activated the holographic display at his seat. The images showed the industrial processes that were causing the entropy acceleration. Massive factories processed materials in ways that released exotic particles into space. The particles interacted with the quantum foam, speeding up the natural decay of matter and energy. Look at this, Marcus said. The problem isn't the people. The problem is their technology. They're using quantum resonance amplifiers to process materials, but they don't understand that the amplifiers create exotic particle cascades. We are aware of this, said the first speaker. Stopping their industrial processes would collapse their economy and lead to societal breakdown, so we help them transition to different technology. We cannot share advanced technology with primitive species. That is one of our most fundamental laws, Marcus smiled. Who said anything about sharing our technology? What if we help them develop their own alternative? The council members looked at each other. Marcus could tell they thought he was naive, but he pressed on. Send advisors. Disguise them as members of their own species. Have them join their scientific community and guide their research toward safer industrial processes. It would take time, but it would save 12 billion lives, and the resources required would be enormous, said Counselor Thane. Less enormous than building 50 new worlds for refugees. The risk of discovery would be significant. Less significant than the risk of other species finding out we committed genocide. And if it fails? Asked the first speaker. Marcus took a deep breath. Then we try something else. And if that fails, we try something else after that. We keep trying until we either find a solution or we run out of time. But we don't start with murder just because it's easy. The council chamber was quiet for a long time. Marcus could hear the humming of the station's power systems and the distant sound of the memorial walls reciting names of the dead. Finally, the first speaker spoke. This approach has never been attempted. Maybe it's time to try something new. If we agree to this experiment, you will be personally responsible for its success or failure. If 12 billion beings die because we delayed action, their deaths will be on your conscience. If 12 billion beings die because we chose the easy solution instead of the right one, their deaths will be on all our consciences. The first speaker's crystal body pulsed with changing colors. Marcus could see the ancient being calculating probabilities and outcomes at speeds no human mind could match. The other council members waited in silence. Very well, the first speaker finally said. Operation Salvation is authorized. You have 5 standard years to develop and implement an alternative solution. If you fail, the viral option will be deployed immediately. Marcus felt a mixture of relief and terror. He had just convinced the galaxy's most powerful secret organization to risk the lives of billions of beings on an untested plan. If he was wrong, if his human optimism was just naive foolishness, then he would be responsible for a catastrophe beyond imagination. Thank you, he said. Do not thank us yet, said Counselor Vex. You have just accepted responsibility for one of the most difficult problems in galactic history. We will be watching to see if human creativity is truly superior to proven methods. As the council session ended and the members began to disperse, Marcus stood alone in the chamber. The crystallized timetable showed him images of possible futures. In some, the 12 billion beings lived and prospered. In others, 7 star systems died slow deaths as entropy consumed them from within. He thought about his wife Sarah and his daughter Katie. They would never know what he was doing here. They would never understand the choices he was making in their name. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the whole purpose of the Council of Necessary Evils was to carry the burden of these decisions, so that people like his family could live in a universe where such choices didn't have to be made. Marcus Chen, former Starship commander and current Galaxy Saver, walked out of the chamber to begin the hardest job in the universe, proving that there was always another way. The research station orbiting Nexus Prime looked like a small moon from the outside. Inside, it was the most advanced scientific facility Marcus had ever seen. Laboratories filled with equipment that could manipulate matter at the quantum level. Computer systems that could simulate entire universes. Teams of the galaxy's best scientists working together on the impossible task of saving 12 billion lives. Marcus stood in the main control room, watching holographic displays that showed the planet below. The exotic particle emissions were getting worse every day. The quantum cascade that would eventually destroy 7 star systems was building momentum with each passing hour. They had been working for 3 years, and time was running out. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, his wife, who had been assigned to the project because of her expertise in alien technology, stood beside him. She looked tired. They all looked tired. 3 years of 18-hour days were taking their toll on everyone. The new industrial design is ready for testing, Sarah said. We've modified their quantum resonance amplifiers to include cascade dampeners. If our calculations are correct, this should reduce exotic particle emissions by 98%. And if our calculations are wrong, then we've just wasted 3 years and 12 billion people die anyway. Marcus nodded. The weight of responsibility had not gotten easier to carry. Every night he dreamed of the faces on Nexus Prime. Children playing in parks, scientists working in laboratories, artists creating beauty from living light, all of them depending on him to find a solution. That might not exist. His communication device chimed with an urgent message from the Council of Necessary Evils. Marcus opened it and felt his stomach drop. New development, the message read. Cascade acceleration faster than predicted. 7 star systems now have 18 months before total entropy collapse. Council meeting in 6 hours. Sarah read the message over his shoulder. That's not enough time. I know. Even if our solution works perfectly, it will take at least 2 years to retrofit all their industrial facilities. I know. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to think. 3 years of work and they were still too slow. The universe was running out of patience and the Council of Necessary Evils would not wait much longer before implementing their viral solution. 6 hours later, Marcus sat in the council chamber again. The crystallized timetable showed images of dying stars and collapsing galaxies. The future was looking darker with each passing moment. Your experiment has failed, said Counselor Vex. The cascade acceleration makes your solution impossible to implement in time. We must proceed with the viral option immediately. We need more time, Marcus said. Time is the one resource we do not have. replied the first speaker. Every day we delay increases the risk of cascade propagation to other galaxy clusters. We could be looking at the end of the universe itself. Marcus stood up. What if we evacuate some of them? We have discussed this. Full evacuation is impossible. Not full evacuation. Partial evacuation. We save as many as we can while implementing our industrial solution for the rest. Counselor Thane crackled with electric displeasure. You propose to divide the population? How do we choose who lives and who dies? We ask for volunteers. The council chamber fell silent. Marcus could see the alien beings exchanging glances that clearly said they thought he had lost his mind. Volunteers? Said Counselor Vex. You want to tell 12 billion beings that they are all going to die unless some of them agree to leave their homeworld forever? Yes. That will cause panic, wars, the complete breakdown of their civilization. Maybe, or maybe it will cause something else. Maybe it will cause them to work together to save themselves. The first speaker leaned forward. Explain. Marcus activated his holographic display. It showed population distribution maps of Nexus Prime, along with industrial facility locations and transportation networks. We tell them the truth. All of it. We explain that their industrial processes are accelerating entropy decay. We explain that we have a solution, but it will take time to implement. We explain that some of them need to leave the planet temporarily while we fix the problem. And you believe they will volunteer to become refugees? I believe some of them will, especially if we promise to bring them back once the industrial transition is complete. Counselor Vex's mercury body rippled with skepticism. How many refugees can we realistically handle? Marcus had been working on this calculation for weeks. Our projections suggest we can evacuate and house approximately 2 billion beings across 17 different worlds. If we implement our industrial solution for the remaining 10 billion, we can reduce exotic particle emissions enough to slow the cascade. Slow it, but not stop it. Stop it enough to buy us the time we need for full implementation. The first speaker was quiet for a long time. When it finally spoke, its voice carried the weight of ages. You are asking us to reveal our existence to an entire civilization. You are asking us to disrupt the natural development of their society. You are asking us to take responsibility for billions of refugees. And you are asking us to do all of this on the hope that your untested solution will work. Yes. And if it fails? If revealing our existence causes galactic panic? If the refugees cannot be resettled? If the industrial solution proves inadequate? Marcus thought about his daughter Katie. She would be 8 years old now, old enough to understand that her father was away doing something important, but not old enough to understand what that something was. He thought about all the children on all the worlds that would die if the entropy cascade spread beyond their local cluster. Then we will have tried everything possible before. Resorting to genocide, the council voted. 23 species supported the evacuation plan. 24 opposed it. The deciding vote belonged to the first speaker. Marcus waited. Around the table, representatives of galactic civilization watched the ancient being calculate the future of the universe. The crystallized timetable showed branching possibilities, some leading to salvation, others to destruction on a scale that defied comprehension. Motion approved, the first speaker finally said. Operation Salvation Phase 2 is authorized. You have 18 months. 3 days later, every communication device on Nexus Prime received the same message simultaneously. It appeared in their own language, delivered by beings who looked exactly like them but spoke with knowledge that no one on their world possessed. Citizens of Nexus Prime, the message began. We are representatives of the Galactic Council. Your world is part of a vast community of intelligent species that spans the galaxy. We are contacting you now because your planet faces a crisis that threatens not only your own lives, but the lives of billions of other beings. The message went on to explain the entropy cascade, the exotic particle emissions, and the solution that required both industrial changes and temporary evacuation. It concluded with an invitation. We understand that this is difficult to accept. We understand that leaving your homeworld requires tremendous courage. But we also understand that your people are capable of greatness. We have watched your civilization for many years, and we believe you have the strength to survive this crisis. The response was everything Marcus had hoped for, and everything he had feared. Some regions of the planet erupted in panic. Others mobilized with stunning efficiency. Religious groups declared it the end of the world. Scientists demanded proof. Politicians tried to maintain order while secretly preparing their own escape plans, but millions of ordinary beings stepped forward as volunteers. Parents who wanted their children to have a future, scientists who wanted to see the galaxy they had dreamed about, artists who wanted to create beauty among the stars, young people who saw evacuation as an adventure rather than exile. The evacuation ships began arriving 1 week later. Massive vessels that could hold entire cities, operated by crews of a dozen different species. The beings of Nexus Prime got their first look at the galactic community they were joining, creatures of crystal and light, beings that existed as pure energy, species that breathed water instead of air. Marcus stood on the bridge of the evacuation coordinator ship, watching millions of refugees board transports that would take them to temporary homes on worlds they could barely imagine. Below them, 10 billion beings remained on Nexus Prime, working desperately to retrofit their industrial facilities before time ran out. Sarah joined him at the observation window. Think it will work? Marcus watched a transport ship full of Nexus Prime children disappear into hyperspace. Ask me in 18 months. And if it doesn't work, then we'll have proven that some problems really can't be solved. But at least we'll have tried everything first. The entropy cascade continued to build. The countdown to galactic catastrophe continued to tick toward zero. But for the first time in the history of the Council of Necessary Evils, they were trying to save everyone instead of choosing who had to die. The moment of truth came on a Tuesday. Marcus Chen stood in the observation deck of the monitoring station, watching as the last industrial facility on Nexus Prime came online with its new quantum dampening system. 3.5 years of work had led to this moment. Billions of beings had been evacuated to temporary homes across the galaxy. 10 billion more had remained on their homeworld, working day and night to rebuild their entire industrial civilization. Exotic particle emissions are dropping, announced Dr. Sarah Okonkwo from her console. 96% reduction across all industrial sectors. Around the control room, scientists from 40 different species held their breath. They were watching readings from instruments that could detect the decay of reality itself. For months, those readings had climbed steadily toward catastrophe. Now, for the first time in 5 years, they were going down. Entropy cascade is slowing, reported another scientist. Rate of decay dropping to sustainable levels. Marcus felt something he had not experienced in years. Hope. Not just the desperate hope of someone trying to solve an impossible problem, but real hope based on measurable success. His communication device chimed with a priority message from the Council of Necessary Evils. Marcus opened it, expecting congratulations or at least acknowledgement that the evacuation plan had worked. Instead, he read words that made his blood freeze. New crisis detected. Stellar cascade in core systems threatens total galactic extinction. Traditional solution requires sacrifice of outer rim populations. Council meeting in 2 hours. Your immediate presence required. Marcus closed his eyes. He had saved 12 billion lives on Nexus Prime. But the universe was not finished testing him. It never would be. 2 hours later, he sat in the council chamber again. The crystallized timetable now showed images that were almost too terrible to look at. Stars exploding in chain reactions, galaxies torn apart by uncontrolled energy releases, trillions of beings dying as the very fabric of space collapsed around them. The situation is unprecedented, said the first speaker. A stellar engineering experiment in the core systems has triggered a cascade reaction. Within 50 standard years, 90% of our galaxy will be uninhabitable. The images on the table shifted to show the technical details. A species called the Architects had been attempting to create an artificial star. Something had gone wrong. Instead of creating one stable star, they had triggered a reaction that was causing other stars to explode in sequence. Recommended solution? Asked Marcus, though he already knew he would not like the answer. Controlled implosion of the outer rim star. Systems, replied Counselor Vex. We sacrifice 40 billion lives to create a gravitational barrier that will contain the cascade. The core systems and inner rim survive. The rest of the galaxy becomes uninhabitable. Marcus looked at the proposed solution. It was elegant in its simplicity and horrifying in its scope. 40 billion beings would die instantly as their stars were artificially collapsed into black holes. But the gravitational disruption would create a barrier that prevented the cascade from spreading further. How long do we have to implement this? Marcus asked. 6 months. After that, the cascade becomes uncontainable. Marcus studied the data. The math was clear. There was no time for evacuation. No time for alternative solutions. No time for the careful, patient work that had saved Nexus Prime. This was the kind of crisis that the Council of Necessary Evils had been created to handle, the impossible. Choice between many deaths and even more deaths. "I want to try something else," Marcus said. The council chamber erupted in what could only be described as alien laughter. 47 different species expressed amusement in 47 different ways. Councillor Vex's mercury body rippled with waves of humor. Councillor Thane crackled with electric mirth. Even the first speaker's crystal form pulsed with colors that indicated entertainment. "Marcus Chen," said the first speaker when the laughter died down, "you have become famous throughout the galaxy for your optimism. Your success with Nexus Prime has inspired many species to reconsider their approach to crisis management. But this situation is beyond even your abilities. What if it's not? Explain." Marcus activated his holographic display. It showed the cascade propagation pattern in 3 dimensions. The stellar explosions were spreading outward from the core systems in a predictable pattern. "The cascade is following gravitational streams," Marcus said. "It's using the natural structure of the galaxy to spread from star to star. But what if we change that structure? Change the gravitational structure of the galaxy?" Councillor Vex sounded incredulous. "That would require energy equivalent to 1,000,000 supernovas. No, it would require volunteers." Marcus highlighted specific points on the galactic map. "The cascade is spreading along predictable paths. If we can disrupt those paths at key points, we can break the chain reaction. But it requires ships to position themselves at the disruption points and detonate their engines at precisely the right moments." The council chamber fell silent. Marcus could see the alien beings calculating the implications of his proposal. "You are asking for suicide missions," said Councillor Thane. "I'm asking for volunteers." "How many volunteers?" Marcus had been running calculations since he received the crisis report. "Approximately 10,000 ships, each with a crew of 50 to 100 beings. Total casualties, 1,000,000 volunteers. 1,000,000 deaths instead of 40 billion deaths," mused the first speaker. "The mathematics are appealing, but you are assuming that 1,000,000 beings will volunteer to die for strangers. I'm assuming that some beings will choose to be heroes." The first speaker was quiet for a long time. Around the table, representatives of galactic civilization waited for the ancient being to make a decision that would determine the fate of their galaxy. "This plan has never been attempted," the first speaker finally said. "The coordination required would be unprecedented. The timing would have to be perfect across thousands of light years. And it depends entirely on finding enough volunteers willing to sacrifice their lives. The Nexus Prime evacuation required unprecedented coordination too," Marcus pointed out, "and we found millions of volunteers for that. Evacuation is not the same as suicide. No, but heroism is heroism." The council voted again. This time the result was not even close. 46 species voted to attempt Marcus's volunteer solution. Only one opposed it, and that was only because they wanted to try an even more optimistic approach involving time travel. The call for volunteers went out across the galaxy 12 hours later. It was broadcast on every communication network, translated into every known language, and delivered with the same simple message. "The galaxy faces extinction. We have a solution. It requires heroes." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Military crews volunteered in entire fleets. Civilian pilots offered their personal ships. Entire families volunteered together, saying they would rather die as heroes than live as refugees. Scientists volunteered because they wanted to contribute to the greatest experiment in galactic history. Artists volunteered because they wanted their final act to be the creation of something beautiful. Within a week, they had more volunteers than they needed. The problem became choosing which heroes to accept and which to turn away. Marcus spent the next 5 months coordinating the most complex military operation in galactic history. 10,000 ships had to be positioned at precise locations throughout the galaxy. Each ship had to arrive at exactly the right time and detonate its engines at the exact moment when the cascade reached their position. There was no room for error. If even one ship failed to reach its destination or detonate at the wrong time, the entire plan would collapse and 40 billion beings would die. On the day of the operation, Marcus stood on the bridge of the coordination ship and watched 10,000 heroes prepare to save the galaxy. Each ship was crewed by volunteers who had chosen to sacrifice their lives for people they would never meet. The Cascade reached the first disruption point at exactly the predicted time. The volunteer ship positioned there detonated its engines in a burst of light that could be seen across half the galaxy. The Cascade wavefront hit the disruption and split, its energy dispersed harmlessly into space. One by one, across thousands of light years, the volunteer ships completed their missions. Marcus watched 1,000,000 heroes die to save 40 billion strangers. He watched the stellar cascade break apart and fade as its path through the galaxy was systematically destroyed. When it was over, when the last ship had completed its mission and the galaxy was safe, Marcus sat alone in his quarters and cried, not from sadness but from something he had never felt before. Absolute certainty that the universe was filled with beings capable of incredible goodness. The universe's response came 3 days later. Not as a message this time, but as a feeling that touched every conscious mind in the galaxy simultaneously. For the first time in cosmic history, the universe experienced hope. And Marcus Chen, former Starship commander and current proof that heroes exist, smiled and began planning for whatever impossible problem the universe would present next.